For people who are not familiar with the MIND diet, what is it and what separates it from other diets in the nutrition space?
Sure.
Yeah, I can take that one. Sure. Yeah. So it's a hybrid between the Mediterranean and the DASH diets. And so most people, I'm sure, have heard of the Mediterranean diet, right? A whole host of vegetables, and the Mediterranean diet would say lots of fruits. So to answer your question, what separates it from other diets out there, the only fruit that's been associated with brain health is going to be your berries. The other thing that separates it is the specific research that has been connected to brain health when it comes to the vegetables. So we think, and we've seen from the research, that vegetables are so important. We put them in two separate categories. We've got our leafy green vegetables, and then we've got our other vegetables. So that's really the two things that separate it. The other thing that I would say is research on fish. So fish consumption, Mediterranean diet, the recommendation is much higher. For brain health, just one serving a week was shown to be protective.
That's it?
It is, yeah. And, you know, the other thing, and I'm sure we'll get into this, but as a registered dietitian, I like to recommend that people take a whole health approach to healthy eating. So I really recommend they follow recommendations for, heart health as well. American Heart Association is still recommending twice a week for heart health. So I think that getting more servings is beneficial. But overall, it's health and wellness, and, getting overall healthy eating pattern is what the recommendations are.
So the MIND diet recommends one serving of fish per week. The American Heart Association recommends two.
Yes.
So you're going to default to the 2 servings a week, just because, cardiovascular health we know is important for brain health as well, right?
Yes. What's good for the heart is good for the brain.
Yes. I think, so the one fish recommendation was based on where they saw benefit in the brain, right? You could just, anything over that it wasn't an increased benefit. So I think that's something nice about the MIND diet. If you're not a fish eater, you don't like it, or it's just not part of your diet, trying to get in one serving a week is way more doable than 2 or 3 that the Mediterranean recommends. So it's kind of, it's not, with the MIND diet, it's not you have to eat just that, right? Just one. You can eat more, sure, if you want to, but the science shows that the benefits come from just one serving a week for protection of cognitive decline.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And what if you don't like fish at all? Can you just pop a fish oil supplement?
Yeah, well...
So so fish oil supplements, the research has shown that it's been beneficial. There are some studies that show that omega-3 fatty acids in fish oil has been shown to help alleviate depression. There were some studies on heart health as well that also were not showing protective, and right now the Global Health Brain Symposium is not recommending supplementation for omega-3 fatty acids. Now, that being said, I do recommend that if people do not eat fish at all, that they could take an omega-3 supplementation of DHA and EPA. I usually tell them 1,000 milligrams. And the recommendation is based on if they're not eating any fish at all. We know it's not going to hurt you. So trying to get some omega-3s in, and then trying to get other sources. You won't get sources of DHA from the plant-based items like the nuts and seeds. So trying to get a fish serving in is the best option.
So if you don't eat fish, popping a fish oil supplement, better than nothing at the very least.
I would say, yes. Yes.
Very interesting. Okay, going back to berries.
Yes.
The only fruit that the MIND diet makes a recommendation for are berries. Is it all berries? Is it a specific kind of berries? And what dose of berries are we talking about?
Yeah, most of the research was done in strawberries and blueberries, but because of the anthocyanins and the flavonoids contained in them that are also in other berries, the recommendation is that all berries are good. And the research is 5 times per week. And we're talking about a half a cup serving. So that's pretty easy to get. I usually tell people to envision, about a fist size is about a cup. So if you can do that 2.5 times a week, then it's pretty easy to get that in throughout the week.
Doesn't matter if they're frozen or fresh.
No, it doesn't. So I get this question a lot, both for not only berries to get them in, but also vegetables. I really recommend even frozen is the next best thing to fresh. You know, people get really excited when they hear about the healthy foods. They want to go to the grocery store and buy all the different kinds of vegetables and all the fruits, and then they get them home and then they go bad in the refrigerator and they start to degrade. Once the colors start to turn and it starts to get wilted, all of your not only vegetables but something like berries, then your nutrients are depleted. So when they freeze, things like berries and your vegetables, they freeze them at the height of their ripeness, so it has the highest concentration of the nutrients in it. So it's a good idea to consume them frozen.
Wow.
And the blueberries in particular, though, they have a higher anthocyanin when they're fresh as opposed to frozen. I think it's almost twice as much. We don't like to say don't eat frozen because of that. You're still getting a lot of those nutrients, but it is different with the berries sometimes than with vegetables, which kind of can hold more when they're frozen. But
sense.
Berries sometimes, and strawberries too, their anthocyanin's a little bit lower when they're frozen.
Interesting.
But
is there a
eat it all.
Would you say is there a difference between organic and conventional, or is it whatever you can get your hands on?
That's, where is the research on that? If we're going off of the research, there really isn't much investigation into that I'm aware of, and so it's hard to make a recommendation on that. I think that comes down to a personal decision a little bit. If you can afford to buy organic, if it makes sense for you. Obviously, I would think I'd rather eat stuff that isn't sprayed with chemicals than is, but you wash them well, and if you can't afford the organic ones, then absolutely still eat the non-organic. Yeah.
I think environmental impact too, right?
Oh yeah.
Laura can
absolutely.
talk all day long about the environmental impact.
And but again, there's so little. I remember my mom being asked a question about this too, and it's just it's very hard to study when people are eating organic food, right? Because we don't even, things can be labeled organic and they're partially organic, right? And or mislabeled, or how much of our food are we getting that's organic, and what are you measuring? It's a very hard thing to study. So unfortunately, I just don't think there's a lot of data to recommend one more than the other. But that's when, again, I think it's a personal choice that you make with it.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of healthy user bias too that would likely, in my view, show a way higher magnitude of effect that might not necessarily be causal. It's just that somebody who is affluent enough to be able to afford organic everything and is looking to buy organic everything you're probably going to see better health outcomes just across the board.
Yeah, absolutely.
Due to variables outside of the fact that they're just consuming organic berries compared to conventional.
Yeah.
That's often the problem with research studies. People who volunteer to sign up for research studies are often healthier and have these patterns that we're not necessarily studying, right? We can study patterns and try to, factor out some things and control for different variables, but living a healthy lifestyle your entire life and being someone who, and again, I'm sure we'll get to this, but part of our cohort in the Mind Diet study were from a repository of people who have participated in research studies before, so it's it's a little bit difficult to get the normal person, right?
Yes.
Yeah, nutrition science is really hard to do.
It is. Yeah. It is.
It's really hard to do.
It's an uphill battle, but we've come a long way. You think we were talking about back in 2017 where it was at to where it is now, and I think about my mom's journey with this when she started investigating nutrients and their effect on the brain. She was told, don't waste your time. There's nothing there. This is her submitting grant after grant, and it came back, no, this is a waste of time. There's nothing that nutrients are doing in the brain. It's not there. And she was very persistent, and she finally, after a couple of years, got approval to do a grant on, I think, vitamin B and C or something, just looking at these little nutrients. It took, and that was in the early 90s. That's not that long ago, so we've come a long way in our understanding, and in all the nuances of nutrition science, we've still come out with a lot. So I think it's really exciting, and I can't wait to see where it goes. There's so much more to learn and explore with it. So
yeah. Was the Mind Diet first devised in 2017, was that when it?
2015.
2015.
They were getting ready to do a clinical trial on nutritional interventions of the brain and in relation to Alzheimer's, and they were looking at what diet they would use. And that's what Jen was saying. They were looking at the Mediterranean DASH, both well-rounded diets, a lot of evidence for protection of cardiovascular diseases. And my mom and her team were like, wait a minute. We have all this evidence on certain foods that are protective for the brain. We need to incorporate these. So that's what they did. They went through each category with the vegetables, with the fruit, and they modified it based on the scientific literature for brain protection. And that's how they came up with the Mind Diet. That's why it's called the Mediterranean DASH intervention for neurodegenerative delay.
Interesting. So for somebody, what does somebody stand to gain by adopting the principles proposed by the Mind Diet and in your book?
A lot. It could be a lot.
With the observational research studies, those initial studies that Laura was just describing, how the Mind Diet was born, what it showed was that people who followed it really closely had a risk reduction in Alzheimer's disease up to 53%. So my favorite statistic about that is that even the people that followed it moderately well had a 35% reduction in their risk. And so the reason I like that so much is because, we work with people every day that will say, okay, tell me what to eat, show me what to do, like give me a diet, right? Like write it out for me. And well, that's what I do because I'm a dietitian, right? So I'll give it to you, right? But the odds that you're going to be following, eat this for breakfast, this for lunch, this for dinner, and do everything perfectly your entire life is slim, right?
They make it a day.
Right.
You're like, did you do it? They're like, for a day. You're like, okay. Yeah.
So I love the idea that people can truly implement moderation. I think that word gets misused a lot, moderation. But this idea that we had this whole cohort of people. So the early research studies were over 900 people that filled out these food frequency questionnaires. They asked them how much they ate, how often they ate them, and in what amounts. And that's what was found. Every year they went through cognitive testing and monitored all of the foods that Laura was talking about.
19 cognitive tests. They had a very, very thorough idea of what their cognition was doing. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so they were able to watch, how can we see what effect this has and these individual foods have. And so that was what was found. And I just really like the idea that people don't have to be perfect. That's my soundbite. People don't have to be perfect.
I love that. So these were cognitively healthy people?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And they were tracked, I guess, over a certain number of years. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do we know how many
so the 2015, the first publication on the Mind Diet that was published in 2015, they were tracked over 10 years. Wow. That was the incidence of Alzheimer's disease. Yeah.
Got it. So for people who aren't familiar with how these kinds of studies work, so by the end of that 10-year period, you obviously have a cohort that went into the study cognitively healthy, and then a certain proportion of them in both, well, I guess among the whole group.
The whole group, because it's a cohort study.
Because it's a whole cohort, yeah. Went on to convert to Alzheimer's disease.
Right.
And so you look at their diets and you're like, okay, well, what were each of these people eating? How closely had they adhered to this Mind Diet, right? And you saw this dramatic risk reduction for people. Wow.
Yeah, it's really exciting. And that cohort, so that's called the Memory and Aging Project. And that cohort continues to be studied over time, even now. And so people continue to, continue to join and be studied, and then continue to be studied for longer periods of time. And one of the other things that's really exciting is that many of them volunteered to donate their brains after death. So what you're talking about is looking at the clinical manifestations of Alzheimer's disease while they're living, but then also getting a chance to look at the actual brain pathology after death, looking at the beta amyloid plaques and the tau tangles. And so the two foods, that's why initially I named the berries and the leafy green vegetables. Those have been found to be the two most powerful foods in association with positive lower levels of the beta amyloid plaques and the tau tangles, and then the negative side is the saturated fat, the fried foods and the sweets and sugars, which I'm sure they'll want to talk all about. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself.
No, definitely. I would love to. But okay, so but berries and dark leafy greens were the most strongly associated with better cognitive health outcomes.
Correct.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, your mom, isn't she the one who published the study? She was the lead author on the study that found that dark leafy greens every day, a bowl of dark leafy greens.
Yes. Yeah.
Led to brains that performed up to 11 years younger, right?
Yeah. It's incredible. Yeah. I feel like my childhood is speckled with her coming home so excited after she's analyzed data and found something in her work. And I can remember that one clearly. And she was so excited because she loves leafy greens and everything like that. But yeah, that was a big, big moment, I think, to see such a high level of protection, right? With a food for the brain. Yeah, that one was a really big one, and that one stands out. And luckily, that can be a consensus with so many diets that, you know what, who's saying it's bad? Is there anyone saying it's bad? Any diets? No. Like
there are some. Carnivore dieters.
Oh, they don't want leafy greens?
Yeah, no, they're anti-leafy greens. Yeah, what do you guys make of that?
Meat. Just meat.
Just meat.
Nothing but meat.
All meat. All
Not
the time.
even beer and meat. Just meat.
I'm a professionally trained chef. I just couldn't imagine limiting myself in that way. It just doesn't sound fun, you know? It sounds obsessive or something. Just eat one. Yeah. They just.
Yeah.
Okay.
Many of them just don't like
eggs. Okay.
Yeah. Many of them, it's like a personal. It's a choice motivated by the fact that they just don't like vegetables, which is so bewildering to me. Like I grew up loving vegetables.
That's good. I don't feel like you're maybe the standard American then.
No. Yeah. Fair.
You know, we work with a lot of people, and I'm like, I always tell people, I'm like, you gotta grow up. You don't like vegetables, you gotta grow up. It's time. You know.
Well, maybe you could share as a chef. How do you make vegetables taste delicious? Because I think a lot of people think that vegetables inherently are just not that delicious.
Probably because they weren't raised eating them, I would imagine, or eating them from cans or, overcooking them. I think vegetables are very, if you want to, they all have kind of different cooking techniques, but it's all about being kind of gentle with them, The leafy greens is easy for eating them raw, right? Just, make sure they're tasty, and you can just put a delicious dressing on them, olive oil based dressing. And I don't know, like, how do you make vegetables taste good? You season properly, use a little bit of fat with them because a lot of the nutrients are fat soluble. So a little olive oil, drills it over them. I like roasting, I like sauteing, I like steaming. Take it easy on you. I always say it's like temperature control when you're doing stuff, don't like just cook crazy, it's not a steak. It's like, be gentle with it, and then pick things that you like. If you don't like them at all, then start with something that you might like. I have young kids, like they like raw vegetables. Like I feel like all kids are going to be more likely to eat a raw cucumber than radishes and sweet potatoes or something. So pick something that's kind of mild and just start like eating that with a little bit of salt. If you like something with a little sprinkle of vinegar on it, just start simple. And again, with the Mind diet, it's 1 serving leafy green and 1 serving other vegetables. So if you're overwhelmed with eating 4 servings of vegetables, like the Mediterranean diet starts with just, have a half a cup of cucumber slices. That's easy, right?
Yeah. Some is better than none.
Yes, absolutely it is. And it's just about building, kind of building in those habits, which is really a main theme of our book is we want people to be educated on the science and the nutrition, but it's all about how to do this, right? We want people to know how, like what you just said. You don't like vegetables. How can we get them in? What does that look like? How do you build in that habit, that daily habit, so it becomes routine and you don't have to think about it? That's really like the bread and butter, or what do we call it? Lean meat and sweet potatoes.
The lean meat and sweet potatoes.
Whatever. Yeah.
Lean meat and sweet potatoes.
Of
I
our
like
book,
it.
Yeah.
Well, what a perfect pairing of a dietitian and a chef getting together to write a book about nutrition for the brain. I think it's so cool. As a dietitian, what's your take when people admonish the potential health benefits of dark leafy greens? Because every food group now today on social media has some dietary tribe out there hating it.
It's scary out there.
Yeah, it really is.
It's so fearful.
And I like to ask people, where are you right now? How can I help you? How can I meet you where you're at, right? What do you like? And then how can we incorporate some of this stuff into it? I don't know. Some of these trends, I think, is just trying to get attention, right? How can we say the thing that is the most outrageous so people will pay attention, and then...
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot of fear-based, and that's kind of sexy, whereas, the Mind diet, there is no foods that you cannot eat. and even get, you can have red meat up to 3 times a week. You can have sweets or pastries up to 4 times a week. Like, to me, that's not super limited. That's pretty, you can still have things that you really like. Watch the portions, watch what's being made with it and things like that. But it's really a moderation diet. It is. It's not, I think a lot of people think, oh, the Mind Diet, you can't have meat on it. It's like, no, you can. They looked at what was the level where it was starting to be detrimental. What were people eating that was causing harm? And it wasn't at 3 servings or less of red and processed meat, right? So I think that's hard for an American mind, for moderation. It's not sensationalized. It's hard. It's hard for us to do. We like, going big or going home. But
I get it. Yeah. Are you both omnivores? Are you both meat and vegetable eaters?
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Love it. How do you reconcile the recommendation to limit meat to? Well, for one thing, I think it's interesting that the recommendation for sweets and pastries, you can have up to 4 servings of sweets and pastries,
like a lot,
but only 3 servings of meat. And we know that there's that the studies on red meat, particularly at the population level, tend to be confounded, right? By going back to healthy user bias. Like, people who tend to eat more meat tend to not be as health conscious. Sure. They tend to, and particularly with processed meat, right?
Yeah.
So how do you circle that square? How do you reconcile the fact that the anti-meat dietary diet recommendations tend to be kind of mired in, confounders and healthy user bias?
Yeah. You want to start with that one?
Yeah, I think it's tricky because I think that, what we're saying is try to avoid the types of, so we're talking about meat, right? Try to avoid the meats that have been studied, right? What were people eating in those studies?
McDonald's, hot dog, bologna.
McDonald's, hot dogs, sausages, right? Really high processed, high saturated fat, high trans fat, right? Horrible processed
Probably
meats.
with cheese on it and French fry, it's
combinations. And so, I think that it's difficult to sift out if there's other healthier, I know you're a proponent of grass-fed.
Yeah, grass-fed.
Beef.
And
right?
lean as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm not one of these big fatty ribeyes every night for dinner advocates at all, or hot dogs and things like that. Meat is a spectrum, and so I just all I implore my listeners to do, and even my guests who I've had on, is to just bring a little bit of nuance back to the conversation. Nuance, more nuance in all domains of the conversation these days regarding pretty much anything. To be honest, I think it would be a welcome improvement.
I feel like not everyone, your diet's going to be different than mine. We have different dietary needs, right? As do Jen and I. So the idea that we all should not be eating meat. Some people maybe do get benefits from it. Some people maybe don't, or that it's really not aligned with their values, or, if it's more of a vegan thing, where you just don't want to be eating animal. That's a different kind of thing, and that's fine. We're not all meant to eat the same way. As, you want to be healthy, of course, but you can be healthy eating meat, and you can be healthy not eating meat. It's you have to make sure you're getting a balanced diet in there. As you said, it's not just that one thing, right? It's getting all the nutrients, and so being cognizant of what you're eating, no matter what, if you're a meat eater or not a meat eater, is important. The whole picture, the whole plate.
The whole plate.
The whole plate. Yes.
Yeah, I totally agree. I remember when I had your mom on the show, which was an incredible privilege. She was one of my first guests. I remember her talking about the fact that there's not really a ton of data on eggs and dementia risk. However, she was a big fan. She was like, well, it stands to reason. If I recall correctly, she was like, well, it stands to reason. There's a lot of good nutrition in eggs. And eggs are not, contrary to, I think, popular belief, they're not a high saturated fat food.
No, correct.
Yeah. And,
Yeah, so eggs is another one. I think that it's gotten a bad rep, right? In the 90s, we weren't supposed to eat eggs at all. They caused heart disease, right? And I think we know a little bit more now, and I think we're a little bit more educated. But that's correct. Eggs were not associated one way or another for whatever reason when it came to cognitive health. But they weren't poorly associated either, and
Yes, and
We
there was
know
a
that
lot
there's-
of beneficial nutrients in eggs, and yeah, I that's another like personal decision I think with people. But if you like them, and I mean they're nutrient powerhouses, I don't think there's a reason nutritionally to exclude them. Unless you've been told that you're at higher risk by your doctor and to limit them. They still don't say eliminate, right? A doctor wouldn't say eliminate eggs, just limit them if you have a genetic predisposition to high cholesterol, right?
Or if you're like sensitive to them, or if
Yes.
you're some
Like
I mean some are
allergy.
hyper absorbers of dietary cholesterol, although that's a minority. But yeah, I mean I think like everybody's different. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We all have different systems.
Absolutely. So cool. When it comes to fats, I know extra virgin olive oil. We share a mutual love of extra virgin olive oil.
Yeah.
Why is that included and recommended in the Mind diet?
Yeah, it's got great monounsaturated fatty acids, and the vitamin E is a big. So I would say that those are the two big proponents for brain health. So 2 tablespoons per day is the recommendation that was associated with better cognitive health. So we tell people that get your EVOO in however you can. It's also a great substitute for butter, which was kind of on the night, not kind of, it was on the list of
Minimize,
foods to limit. So that's how we try to help people trade out those 2 components.
And a lot of that data came from the Predimed study, right? Where you're familiar with the Predimed study, where they were, which was huge results showing a major protective benefit of extra virgin olive oil for the brain. So,
And walnuts.
yeah. So I think a lot of diets encourage extra virgin olive oil. I think that's one that we know is good. And
Most people agree on that.
Yeah, we can agree on
most
that.
people, yeah.
There we go.
As a chef, do you cook with extra virgin olive oil? I think there's this perception that it's not an oil that you want to cook with.
Yeah, it is. You want to make sure you don't go too high heat with it because it can deplete the nutrient content in it. So I believe the smoke point for olive oil is around 400 if you're in an oven or something. So if I'm going high heat, which I try not to do too much, but I'll switch over to avocado oil, which has a little bit more of a high smoke point. But yeah, I like to think of lightly cooking in oils. I don't like a ton of fat when I'm cooking something, no matter what it is. And then olive oil is really good in its natural form. So just even as a little drizzle on top, like the Italians do, you just drizzle a little on top when you've finished cooking your chicken or your fish or your vegetables. Just that fresh drizzle on top is a great way to get in your servings of it,
Yeah.
Or a salad. It's the easiest way, just put a good dressing on there.
I love it.
It's
like medicinal almost. The
it
benefits
is. Yeah.
of extra virgin olive oil. So great. You mentioned vitamin E is important to the brain. Why is that?
Vitamin E helps because it's a really powerful antioxidant. It also helps reduce inflammation. It also seems to be able to cross the blood-brain barrier, so it sort of has the ability to shuttle and be able to have access to the brain and do its thing.
Yeah, it snatches up free radicals.
Wow.
Them floating around in your brain that can damage, and it's like, I always picture like Pac-Man, like just gonna snatch them up. And I love thinking of that. And so, eating the olive oil, it's like you're just getting that protection in there.
Cleansing the brain.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah.
What are some other foods that are high in vitamin E?
The nuts and seeds. Yeah. So your sunflower seeds, your walnuts, almonds, cashews. A lot of your nuts and seeds are going to be things that we put those healthy fats in the same category. So you can do a lot of the same recipes with that as well. You can sprinkle them on salads. You can crush them up and put them on fish and chicken. You can have them as snack. I usually, when I'm making recommendations for people to have as snacks, I usually try to tell them to always have a good protein or healthy fat source. So that's one thing I really love about nuts is that it's got good protein and it also has the really healthy fats. So they're great as a snack on their own.
Such a great pairing also with vegetables. I mean, in general, dark leafy greens, because as you mentioned, a lot of the most important phytochemicals that we want and nutrients in dark leafy greens are fat soluble.
Yeah.
Yes.
But dark leafy greens tend not to have a lot of fat in their own right.
Yeah, you gotta.
Source.
Yeah. I probably every night with my family we have a leafy green salad with some sort of nut, an EVO dressing, maybe one other cut up vegetable in there. and like some sort of dried cranberry or something. You know, I have kids that helps them eat it. We just every night it's on the table. You know, it's easy. And you know, with the servings of nuts and seeds for the Mind diet, it's not every day, but almost every day. So it's 4 to 5 servings a week, right? So you don't have to be eating nuts all day long. You know, it's
very calorie dense.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
they are.
want to be eating them all day long.
Yeah.
Get yourself in trouble.
You just need a little handful, but you know, so it's not, and you're not going to get more benefit necessarily if you have more. I mean, they have other healthy things in there, but you know, it's very doable to just toss them on your salad. You know, have a little handful of them for a snack with some vegetables or something. Yeah.
So I thought it was so cool that I don't know if you guys recall that there was a USDA study that found that the caloric load of nuts is actually about 30% less on average than what's indicated on the nutrition facts panel. Because when you chew whole nuts, particles go, like large particles go undigested. And so, you know, obviously if you're grinding nuts into a butter, the situation is a lot different. But when you're chewing whole nuts, you actually end up absorbing about 30% fewer of the calories than what would be indicated on the nutrition facts label.
That's interesting. Yeah, I can see that. Like with something like chia seeds or something like that, it's like how much it's just kind of going through. Yeah, I could see that. That is interesting.
Doing their job.
Yeah.
Also, fiber. It's kind of nice. Nuts are because they're so fatty, they're great to coat like lean proteins with.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Like chicken breast, like
so
lean
delicious.
white fish and things like that.
Yeah. Kind of give a little bit more fat to something that's very lean and add a lot more flavor to it. I agree. Yeah. Nice little nut crumb on there or something. Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, it is.
So good.
Yeah.
So how did you guys team up? Like, tell me about the synthesis of this relationship.
Yeah, we've known each other quite a long time. We met 20 years ago. I hate saying that because it feels like
I know
we were very young.
No,
we were
not
very
at
young. We were working on a clinical trial
you guys
together.
were in elementary school.
We were in elementary school. Yes.
On the playground.
And we were working on a clinical trial together on nutritional interventions for breast cancer survivors.
Breast
cancer
survivors.
Wow.
Actually, one of the other creators of the
Yes,
Mind Diet
under Dr. Christy Tangney, who is also one of the creators of the Mind Diet, very brilliant nutritionist. And we worked on that study together, and I loved Jen's passion, and she was so committed to doing justice for the research and for our participants and the patients. And I was just really drawn to that. We went our separate way, or I went a separate way. I moved to Canada, and Jen stayed at Rush.
She went far away.
I went far away, and when my mom was putting together her team for the Mind Diet, she said, well, what do you think of Jen as a possible leader? And I was like, you won't find anyone better. Don't look anymore. You found her.
Wow.
And she loved having Jen on that team, and she was fantastic. And then so when my mom passed away, we had started this book, and I needed someone to help me to write it and do it justice for everything that was. And really, we wanted, the science has been talked about a good amount, and we do cover the science in the book. That's an important part. But for what Jen does and what I do with people is really show them how to do it, right? And that's where our skill set lands, right? It's so much, you can learn, you can know so much about it, but how do I actually do this? How do I meal plan for this? And how do I get these foods in? That's the hardest part of it, really, is the behavior change, right? Mm-hmm. We can be so knowledgeable, but people that are just not healthy, even though, the
information out there.
They have all, they have it, they're educated, and they just can't get there. So there's so many behavioral things that you can do, and that Jen and I have worked on over the years. That's what we do. So we really wanted to have a book to show people how to do that. And we don't just cover diet because it's really all encompassing, right? Your exercise is dependent on your diet, and your sleep is dependent on your exercise and your diet. It's all connected, and all, things that help prevent dementia. We know that, right? In addition to having positive social connections and learning new things. So we kind of cover all of those things in the book, and we find that to be, the most important thing is really making it applicable into your life. So knowing it is great, but how do you do it? Make it a part of your life.
Yeah, I mean, if you're just telling people to eat spinach all day long, like nobody's gonna freaking do it.
No, and they don't care that there's folate in there. Like some people do, but they want to know how. Okay, how do I do this? I'm just speaking from a lot of people that we've worked with. It's unless you're just someone that's very interested in nutrition science, which there really isn't as many as
We're
as you
a rare
think.
breed, yeah.
Yeah. So, most people just want, how do I do this? How do I make this a part of my life? They're trusting the knowledge that we have in it, and we need to show them how. So that's what we try to do in the book.
Yeah. What would you say are the biggest misconceptions when it comes to making healthy foods delicious at home?
That's a good question. I think that they have to be bland and boring. And I think, I remember, I don't know if he'll like me saying this, when I first met my husband, he would just eat spinach out of the bag. And I looked at him like, what is that? Is that good? Yeah. Why would you do that? He doesn't do that anymore, obviously. But enjoy your food, eat stuff you love, make a beautiful salad for yourself, put things on it that you really like. If, you don't have to have salads either. You can do sauteed greens and put them in with your eggs, or, pick foods you really like and cook that way. Incorporate them into what you already do.
Or that you can never have some of the foods that, are supposedly to limit, right? If your favorite thing is a fried chicken, maybe you're going to have that with your leafy green salad and some beautiful other vegetables, and maybe that's going to be more like a treat once a month versus doing it every single night.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing. I think when I'm talking to people feel like, I want to eat healthier. That's the thing. Give me a meal plan, right? Tell me what to do. And then it's my life is so different every single day. I have to think of doing things differently than I normally go through my day. And I really want people to flip that. Go through your day exactly as you do. And now let's pick a handful of things, even if it's 2 or 3, just to start, to do differently. And then once you get those, maybe we'll pick another 2 or 3 things to do differently.
Yeah.
I love that. Is there what would you say is an optimal breakfast when it comes to brain health and optimizing your brain function over the course of the day?
Okay, so it's a little bit more on just performance in a day too, right? Just of how your brain will be performing in a day, not just neuroprotection.
Yeah, if you think such a breakfast exists. Yeah.
I don't. I'm do you know of such a breakfast? Breakfast is so different for so many people. I think a good combination of protein and carbohydrates and healthy fats is the best that I like to get my day going and get me through my morning. I'm a personal trainer. I'm doing lots of physical work, so I like a hearty breakfast that's going to get me through it. And a good balance of those nutrients is what I would recommend. But again, some people don't like breakfast, and that's okay. It's, as Jen says, it's your first meal of the day. What is that you're having? What are you putting into your body? And you want to pick stuff that's a good balance of nutrients and, not high in sugar and processed food. That's not going to do anything for you. Right? I think that would ruin your day.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think when I work with people one-on-one, that's usually their opportunity to either start the day off right or mess up, right?
Yeah.
Because if they start the day off with donuts and juice, the rest of the day is going to be crap, right?
Yeah.
So can we get something in that is balanced? So I would agree with that. Healthy carbohydrates. I usually tell people to target at least 20 grams of protein in the morning. I think that is where most people go wrong. Also because most breakfast foods, let's be honest, most breakfast foods are crap.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, they are.
It's crap.
When you look at a Mediterranean diet, they don't eat breakfast food. They have eggs and stuff, but they eat beans and legumes and vegetables, and they have whole meals. There's
a salad on your plate at breakfast.
Yeah, maybe some cured fish or something.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I love it. 20 grams of protein, that's a pretty easy lift. I mean, I think I probably hit 50 for breakfast.
Oh, really?
Yeah, most days.
Yeah.
But I also use protein powders and things like that.
Okay. Yeah.
But
I think your standard American diet is probably, I would be surprised if it was 10 grams.
Yeah.
You're right. Well, I'll tell you, my dad, he's 74. He starts the day with a cup of coffee and a banana.
Yeah.
Which,
right.
Banana's
Excellent
great,
example.
but 0 grams of protein.
Yeah.
And see, it's people, I don't want to say it's people like that. People
No,
like your dad.
call him out.
I don't want to offend your dad.
Call my dad out.
But it's it's patterns like that. People think I'm going to start the day off really good.
Yeah.
Right?
Which
I'll
means
just have my
little
coffee
fruit. Yeah.
and a banana because a banana is healthy, right? Because
Most people think
it's
like
fruit.
under eating is like starting it off right,
Yeah.
but that's
Yeah.
actually
Yes. And then that's where they get themselves in trouble too, because I can do good all day long. And then they get through their workday, they're distracted because they're working or doing whatever. Their body just isn't getting hungry because they've conditioned their bodies, their hunger cues to be misaligned, right? And then they get home from work or get to wherever, later on in the day, and it hits them. Or they're drinking coffee all day, and the caffeine not only suppresses appetite, but suppresses the acknowledgement that your blood sugar is low and you need to refuel, right? So I think then people, and by that time, you're not making smart food decisions.
No.
Even if you remember that I'm supposed to get my balanced meal with however many grams of protein and my leafy greens and, my fatty fish, that's not what I'm going to reach for. I'm going to pull through the drive-thru or something like that.
yeah.
To credit your dad a little bit, we do like to encourage people to have routines for their breakfast, lunch, kind of same foods to take away all the thought, right? And there is evidence that eating the same types of foods can help you control your weight better. So there is an advantage to that, but you want to pick things that are going to be a little bit more nutrient dense. And I also think when you have such a skimpy meal, that's a skimpy meal, right? Like you're just robbing yourself of an opportunity to load up on nutrients, right? Like our body absorbs these nutrients slowly in a certain way, right? So if you take a meal, it's a great time to add in nutrients and not just, getting through the morning or something, right? Like really feed yourself well and feed yourself well throughout the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Under eating and ultimately undernourishing yourself is not a good way to start the day. You're shooting, it's counterintuitive, but you're shooting yourself in the foot because you're going to be hungrier later.
Yes.
Whereas, at least in my own experience, and I think the research validates this, particularly with regard to high protein breakfasts, is that when you start your day with a high protein meal, you tend to be less hungry over the course of the day. You tend to consume fewer calories
Sure.
over the subsequent 16 hours.
Yeah, absolutely. And just even being a breakfast eater is shown to people manage their weight better, less likely to be overweight if you're a breakfast eater. So there's lots of advantages to eating it.
Yes.
I mean, eat your breakfast. It's a great, and if you're not hungry, you can also retrain yourself. As Jen said, you might get in the habit of eating all your calories late at night, and then you wake up and you're not hungry, right? You've trained your body. Our bodies are very adaptable. So it might just be having a small breakfast and just slowly making it bigger, eating more throughout the day, so you eat less later in the day, in the evening.
There was a really interesting study that just came out linking late day eating, so like intermittent fasting, but that was a fasting window, or a feeding window rather, that was pushed later in the day with starkly increased risk for cardiovascular disease. And I think that study itself was pretty weak, but I mean, we do know, in light of all the research coming out now on circadian biology, which I don't know if you guys follow, but eating very late into the day, and particularly like after sundown, late at night, when our metabolisms are starting to wind down, it can lead to a degree of dysregulation with regard to blood pressure, with regard to blood glucose.
Yes.
So, I mean, there is actually mechanistic plausibility by which like not eating until late in the day and then continuing to eat up until the point at which you go to sleep might actually, over the long term, affect your cardiovascular risk.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, I think meal timing is a big deal. I think that people, that's the first thing I do with people when I sit down with them to develop, a meal plan, new habits is, and again, I want to know what your day is like. I want to know what is going to be most realistic for you. What are you working throughout the day? When do you work out? How can we tailor this so that you can maximize your own energy levels? How are you going to be able to use this? What fuel do you need around the workout if you're working out? If you're not working out and you're just sitting, you're going to need significantly less carbohydrate, for example. If you're coming home and you're sitting down on the couch, of course that's going to put you at increased risk for cardiovascular disease if you're eating your meal in a 8-hour slot, 6-hour slot, and you're binging. It matters how you break the fast. It makes me nuts to hear people talk about, you've heard me go on a rant on this topic. Yeah. Makes me nuts to hear about what people think intermittent fasting is. Intermittent fasting is not wait as long as you can possibly wait to eat, have your window, and then get as much in of whatever you want as possible. And then as long as you do that, you're cool.
That sounds like an eating disorder.
It's totally.
Like, yeah, that was done in the 90s, right? Like that was called an eating disorder. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, it's like it's abusing what could potentially work really well for people. I've worked with a lot of clients that it works really well for them to eat a little bit later, but then also be aware of how you break the fast and when to stop eating in relation to your bedtime. We know that research does show, we know that late night eating can be particularly harmful for cardiovascular health outcomes.
Yeah.
The American Heart Association put out a big statement about that, about late night eating and meal timing patterns. So we know that.
Yeah. And I think with intermittent fasting, I think it's important that people know why they're doing it. I ask when I have clients that start doing it, I'm like, well, why? What is the why? Often it's for weight loss. Sometimes there might be other reasons that, and then it's also, well, then what are you doing for your fasting? I don't think fasting is bad, that we don't see long-term benefits of it for weight loss, but from the short term, there is benefits. And I know a lot of people do like it. So just, really understand why you're doing it and be clear of what your windows are for eating. As Jen said, it's not just about going as long as you can, right?
Yeah.
There's different types of fasting that have been studied, and it's, kind of pick one that would maybe work for your schedule and what you're doing. And if it's not working for you, then, don't do it. I don't, talk to your doctor, see if there's something going on, but it's, there's not a lot of evidence for it being beneficial for long-term weight loss or for cognitive health either.
Yeah, I mean, I used to wake up and not eat. I used to push my first meal until noon, sometimes even later. And in fact, the later I would push it, the more I would feel like I was winning.
Yeah,
because I was just like fasting longer, more autophagy or whatever.
Yeah.
But I realize now at this point that was a mistake, that I was wrong, that it makes a lot more sense, and the research has supported this, that, you want to eat soon after you wake up. You want to halt that overnight muscle protein breakdown. You want to start your day off right with a consistent high protein meal. And then if you choose to not eat, if you choose to constrain your eating window, which I think can be helpful from the standpoint of obviously calorie control, but also, we know that people tend, when they're eating late at night, it tends not to be the healthiest foods, things like that. Then you can cut your feeding window. You can stop eating 2 to 3 hours before bed is generally what I try to do, and what I think makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think it's great. You make a good point in terms of that late night eating. It's not just about the time and the why, right? What are you eating when you get home, and whatever it is, the late night, right? Are you coming home from being out? Is it late night emotional eating? Is it, what's happening? Are you sitting in front of the TV and there's mindless eating happening? I think that gets lost in some of the talk about when to eat and how much to eat as well. It's like, what are the drivers as well?
Yeah. If I haven't hit my protein goal for the day and it's late at night, I'll have like a protein shake. I'll try to eat something if it's late at night that's like predominantly protein based.
Yeah. There's good evidence that that's good for muscle repair and
blood sugar
blood
management
sugar.
as well.
Yeah.
I do
That's a good
that.
pick, yeah.
Can I share with you what I've eaten so far today?
Yes, I would love that.
Yeah?
I want to
Okay.
That was
ask
gonna be our
every
next
person
question.
I meet
Yeah?
that. I do. I love hearing what people eat.
All right. Well, because it's also very trendy on like the social media. People are like, what I eat in a day posts.
Oh, yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? So we're only like halfway through the day, but I'll share my first 2 meals. So I started the day, when I woke up, I drank some black coffee today. I drank like some black coffee. And of course, I drink water first, a cup of water, black coffee. And then about 45 minutes after I wake up, today I did overnight oats. So I did some organic gluten-free oats that I last night put in the fridge with some goat milk, about half a cup of goat milk, and some salt. And then I took it out and I mixed in some casein protein. So about 24 grams of casein protein, which I think is delicious.
Okay.
No affiliation, but I get it from Amazon. It's a brand called Levels Vanilla.
Okay.
Into my overnight. It's 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10.
Okay. All right. Good to know.
I threw half a serving of sliced almonds
Okay.
on top. So good. Almonds, magnesium, the vitamin E, so great. Sliced up a banana, and yeah, that was my first meal of the day.
Okay.
So that was about, if you add the casein with the, whatever the protein in the oats and the milk and the almonds, probably close to 50 grams of protein, like 40, 50 grams of protein.
How much is in the casein?
25 grams of protein.
Okay.
Plus about 5 grams from the milk that I used the night before, 6 grams or so from the almonds. Yeah, so like maybe 30, 35 grams of protein, something like that, maybe 40. 50 is generous, maybe like 35, 40. And so I ate that. I feel great, super tasty. And then about an hour after that, I had a protein shake about an hour after that, so 20 grams of protein. Okay. So I'm already at like maybe 50, 60 grams of protein. And then I hit the gym. Went to the gym, had a great workout. And then after my workout, I came home and I made some super lean venison burger patties. So I had about 8 ounces of venison, grilled simply with some sea salt and some pepper. I threw some organic provolone over it. And then I had, I'm a huge fan of natto. Have you guys heard of natto? It's like this fermented soybean Japanese dish. Really, really good with a little bit of tamari sauce. So I had that, and then I had an apple. And then I had a sumo orange. So I've already had 3 fruits. I had a banana, sumo orange, and an apple. I had about 8 ounces of venison, which is about 50 grams of protein right there. So I've already had about 110 grams of protein for the day. Some cheese, some soybeans, some fermented soybeans with, a little bit of tamari sauce in there. So lots of fiber, different plants, fruits.
Yes. Yeah.
How am I doing? That's all I've had so far today.
Wow, doing well. I would just say you need some leafy greens
or
this
vegetables.
evening.
Yeah, I've had maybe this evening. Yeah.
I've
had no leafy greens yet today.
You got your whole grains. It sounds like.
Yeah, I got some grains in there.
Yeah, I mean, it's very good and it's thoughtful. That's what I love. I love when there's thought into what people are eating, right? Like when you added the almonds and the, but like instead of just eating a big bowl of oatmeal, it's like, no, make it tasty, make it something you really love. You love your protein in there. It's like in your lunch, that's like, how many people are eating lunches where they're sitting and doing all those things? That's fantastic. There sounds like a lot of mindfulness in that too, right? Like you're enjoying. Yes, yeah, you're enjoying what you're eating. Like food is meant to be enjoyed, right? It's one of our great pleasures we have. We get to do it daily. Like enjoy it,
it feels
you
so
pick great
strong
foods.
Yeah. I put some sugar-free ketchup on that burger too, on those burger patties.
Okay.
Which I don't know. Does that count as vegetable? Tomato?
No.
There's gotta be lycopene. No. Okay.
No.
There probably is some lycopene in there, actually.
Yeah. Good for the old prostate.
Yeah.
So I'm checking. I could use some dark leafy greens, so maybe later on today. Yeah.
But you are on track, I think.
Yeah.
Sounds good for the day.
Yeah.
A little EVOO with your leafy greens.
Yes.
Yeah, you need a couple servings of that in there.
Definitely. Yeah. Do you have a favorite leafy green?
How do you pick a favorite among so many? I rotate. Yeah, I love like Tuscan or Jacinto kale. Spinach is easy to do. I have young kids that I have to feed, so I usually like mix spinach with romaine for them, and they'll eat that. I love cooking greens too. Like I like that the bitter like arugula sautéed or the collard greens or Swiss chard. I love those. So I do. I like them all.
Is there any particular leafy green, I guess, with regard to the research that is more beneficial than others, or are they all kind of on the same playing field?
It's a good question. It's the darker the green, the darker the leafy green, the more nutrient dense it's going to be. If you think about the deep dark color is like a protective layer. It's the phytonutrients are actually protecting the leaf from the sun's rays, right? The damaging sun rays. So when we eat those, we're getting that protective benefit, which is really cool. So the lighter ones, they don't have as rich a color, right? So they're
like iceberg lettuce is like pretty depleted relative to something like kale or
there's
iceberg
other
lettuce we actually put in the other category, in the other vegetables category, leafy green category, because of the exact reason that you're describing.
Yeah.
Wow. What about cruciferous vegetables? Are you guys fans of those?
Yeah,
definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're powerhouses, right? Yeah. They are.
Sure.
Yeah. All there's not really bad vegetables. Are there bad vegetables, Jen?
I would not say there's bad vegetables. There's starchy vegetables that we might not put in the other vegetable category, but
like white potatoes.
White potatoes, definitely. Actually, when back in the day when I was counseling people on diabetes and how to manage their blood sugar, I would tell them that corn and peas are not vegetables. But in the brain health world, right? If you're only listening to this, Max kind of what? But corn and peas are they got really great fibers and some great bioactives and nutrients in them, so they definitely count as other vegetables. So I'm hard pressed to find a bad vegetable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love corn. People are very, I think there's a lot of confusion around corn. And I think part of that has to do with the fact that the food industry has just taken corn and turned it into a bajillion different permutations.
Yeah, it's very genetically modified.
Like these like food additives that would be unrecognizable. Having originated in corn, but I think like whole corn, like corn on the cob, even popcorn. Popcorn is amazing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, same thing with soy, right? I wouldn't tell someone not to eat a soybean. I wouldn't tell someone not to eat edamame.
Yeah.
I know.
Like soy is not my default protein, but I love edamame. And
it's a complete protein for people that are plant-based eaters. It's a great source of protein. And there's not enemies out there, I don't think it's the amount at which you eat things and the frequency of what you do day in and day out that really matters.
Yeah.
And what else you're doing with it, right? If you have a healthy diet, but you're out binge drinking, 6 days a week, then you're gonna have a problem.
Yeah.
And is drinking in moderation still good for us, or is that?
That's a good question, Lauren. I was just talking about this. Yeah. So yes, one drink for brain health is still associated with, healthy, protective brain outcomes. These days, I cannot find a cardiologist that will recommend any sort of alcohol whatsoever. More newer research has been associating any alcohol consumption with adverse outcomes for blood pressure and cardiovascular outcomes. So there's been, kind of negative.
Yeah.
The tide's turned a little bit.
The tide has turned, I would say.
Yeah.
And the other thing I would say is where the tides have not turned, I feel like this is or should have always been the messaging. This is another thing, like let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture, right? So what are you doing when you're consuming alcohol? If you're sitting down and you're enjoying a nice meal and a glass of wine, wonderful. And you learn that also might be health beneficial, great. But this idea of, I'll tell you a question I get a lot. 7 drinks a week? Okay. Yeah. So then I can rationalize that I can go out and drink 2 bottles of wine in one night. And that's my 7 drinks a week. And it's like, you have to think about your habits overall and the ability to be able to regulate what else you're doing. And so I think people kind of need to take a step back. We know that our inhibitions are lowered when we're drinking. We probably don't make smart choices, including food decisions, any other choices. That's probably a different podcast.
Yeah, but, can disrupt your sleep, make you grab junk food.
Definitely.
So it's 1 glass of 5-ounce wine. That's not a lot. I think people take it as you're encouraging drinking. It's really a small amount. And as Jen said, if you're doing it in an atmosphere where it's, you're enjoying it and you're not going over that, there is evidence that that's protective of the brain. If there's any reason, people who are on the fence about drinking, like that might be a conversation to have with your doctor. Do you have other risk factors that would be incorporated in there that maybe wouldn't be a good idea for you to keep drinking? But if you drink a lot and you can bring it down to 1 drink a week, that's really good. I think that's also looking at it in what the research was showing. It's, we know there's detriments to the brain over 1 drink a week. So if you currently, or drink a day, sorry, if you currently drink 3 drinks at a time and you're, it would be a good idea for you to get down to 1 drink a day, and see how that's from there. And if you want to lose weight, Jen and I know
that's
this.
a whole nother.
Which being overweight is a risk factor for Alzheimer's disease and you need to lose weight. Alcohol is something, to me, that's very obvious to cut temporarily or for a while to see if you can drop weight, because it's, a big contributor to weight gain.
For sure.
Yeah.
Even one drink a day sounds like a lot to me. I mean,
do you drink at all?
I drink very seldom, but
Okay.
like I would essentially consider myself a non-drinker with like rare exception. If I'm at a restaurant and there's a great bottle of wine going around and I want to use it to, just punctuate the experience that I'm having, why not? I'm not dogmatic about it, but in general, no, I don't really drink.
Yeah.
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 Super rarely.
Yeah.
Not even like one a month. I can't tell you. The last time I had a drink was probably 3 months ago.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty rare. Yeah. I think of all the blue zones too, and they drink a little bit, right? Yeah, they drink moderately. So there's lots that we need to know, right? And there's lots of confounding factors around it that can influence, right? Are we seeing benefit because people are being more social that are having one drink versus the non-drinkers, right? I don't know. There's lots to learn about it. So
they're walking from one place to another versus
So that's
that's the whole thing about the blue zones, is that their lifestyles are so different than ours that it's like, I think a lot has been made about their purported diets, but their lifestyles are in so many ways different than ours here in the West.
Socialize like 3 to 5 hours a day or something. I was just watching something about that. Like that's a lot of socializing, right?
Sounds exhausting.
I don't know if I could do it.
Jeez, yeah, same. So for people listening to this, what are 3 high-level take-homes, high-level take-homes for anybody listening to this, watching this, who wants to improve their brain health today from a dietary standpoint? What should they be doing?
Well, first I would say find a way to incorporate vegetables. And I would say predominantly the leafy greens if you're only going to choose one. And, if it's not every day, then how can you do it most days or compare to where you are? That would definitely be one thing that I would say.
My mom got asked this question a lot, and I always liked her answer. She would say, try to eat a salad a day and put one other vegetable in there. Every other day, put nuts on it. Every other day, maybe throw some beans on it or have it with fish or with poultry. But every day, have this salad and kind of mix and match out these things, and you can hit a lot of those Mind Diet foods. But again, it's eating is so much more than just the foods we choose. It's all the behaviors around it. So, but yeah, talking about, you said about nutrition, it's, just Jen and I really emphasize in our book starting with small sustainable habits. Don't try to do it all at once. Just pick 1 or 2 things. The vegetables are a great place to start because they're so good for you and nutrient dense, and just try to incorporate them into what you're already doing. Like do a little swap out, and see how that goes and reflect on it. And is this working? And see if you can make that habit, and then go to the next thing and try and see what else you can just make another small little habit.
That's great. One thing, you're asking about nutrition, but the way we started talking about all of our habits and how to integrate them was actually time management. Because people talk about how they want to improve their diet. And I'm going to go back to the example where people ask me to make them a diet and hand it to them. And even if they were willing and able to eat every single thing on the list that I put on the list, right? It's like they forget that they actually need to go to the grocery store and get the items, carve out the time to prepare whatever it is, like what you were just talking about. I made my overnight oats the night before. I assume you had to physically be somewhere and think ahead. I'm going to do this now. I'm going to I'm going to make my milk, and then at time I'm going to eat it and put my protein powder in.
Yeah.
All of that, you have to plan ahead. If you were out somewhere and you thought, oh, I'm hungry, that wouldn't have been accessible to you.
Yeah.
So my other tip is nutrition related, but it's about time management. Carve it out for yourself. And I ask people, like when I work with people, I pull out your calendar, whether it's, on your iPhone or we got paper calendar, whatever it is that you use these days, right? What are you actually doing this week? what day are you going to go to the grocery store? And we can sit and we can generate a grocery list. And maybe the only thing on your grocery list is how you're going to make your leafy green salad with your, right? But it's the time. How are you going to carve out the time in order to implement things? I think is really important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I make it a part of it. It's now a part of my pre-bed ritual that I prepare my overnight oats for the morning because, I mean, but it's mainly because I think it's so damn delicious. It's like so tasty. And it's like it's like just one less thing I have to worry about in the morning as well.
Yeah.
You know, like what am I going to eat pre-workout so that I know that I'm optimizing my workout? You know, I want like a nice balanced bolus of protein, of carbs, healthy fats, and I look forward to it every morning along with my coffee. So it's really easy for me to prioritize doing that at night.
I think that's huge. I pick food you like.
Yes.
Enjoy it. You know, you have to like what you're eating, or it's not going to stick, right? So I get excited too when I like plan. I'm like, oh yes, I have that in the fridge. You know, it's like it's exciting, and you're thankful to yourself, like, thank you for making that, and it's all ready to go, and I don't have to make decisions because it's already there. So it's that, you know, relieving that stress by planning, right? It's really just prearranged decisions to make your life easier, if you want to think of it that way, instead of like, maybe you're thinking, I'm not a big planner, you know, it's like you're just making decisions for your future self. It's not, you know, it doesn't have to be complex, but just have that ready to go, and you're much more likely to make better choices when you eat.
100%. Because like the worst dietary decisions I've made are when I'm like up against the wall,
hangry,
and my options are limited. I'm out of my house. And I mean, it's like that's when I tend to, those decisions are sometimes my more regrettable decisions.
And I think a lot of people live like that day to day, unfortunately.
Every day.
And that's why it is so important, just the organization of it, you know, whatever you want to call it, but the planning is so big.
There's a brand of protein that I whenever I travel now, there's a brand of protein that makes whey protein in single serving packets that I buy from Whole Foods. The brand is called Ascent.
Okay.
They say I have no financial affiliation with them, but I just I go to Whole Foods, and before any travel, I buy like a dozen or so of these like single serving protein packs, and I keep them in my backpack, and I always travel with a shaker bottle.
Nice.
And so whenever I'm on the road.
Do they have any carbohydrate in them?
No, very few.
Okay.
No, it's just like pure protein.
Okay.
It's just pure protein. Because carbs on the road are easy to find.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so you're pairing everything. Yes.
Carbs and fats, like when I'm eating out in restaurants, like I know I'm getting tons of fats.
Yeah.
I'm getting.
It's true. Yes.
So for me, it's like how can I keep my protein intake up?
Yeah. And then you're satiated, and you can kind of, that's a really good idea. I like that tip.
It's a good tip.
Yeah.
Yeah. I travel religiously with like these packets of protein, because sometimes like when you're in a hotel, you can find fresh fruit. Sometimes there's like a fruit bowl.
Yeah.
You know, so like sometimes if I've got a tight schedule, I'll drink like 1 or 2 packets of the protein, and I'll eat like some fruit, like an apple or something like that, and I feel good for like 3-4 hours.
Yeah.
That's great.
So
See, planning ahead.
Yeah.
You had to think ahead in order to have the protein with you.
Yeah.
Oh, when I travel, it's so important.
Yeah.
So crucially important.
Yeah, traveling is really tough to eat well.
Yeah.
So having a little plan, just having your good little snacks with you is the best way to do it. Don't rely on that airport food or
at the mercy of it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so we've got integrate more dark leafy greens. Consider time management. Like make that something that you keep that top of mind. Planning, decision making. It's going to make things way easier.
Yeah.
What's the third tip to improve your brain health?
Yeah, I would say I'm going to go with the old self-regulation skill of self-monitoring. So take inventory, right? Know what you're doing so that you know what you have to change. So we have a really simple tool for self-monitoring. We actually call it a refrigerator chart, because in our clinical trial, we had people actually put it on their refrigerators to monitor. And it's just monitoring the 15 foods. So you don't have to have a fancy, app that helps you track every single calorie, every single macronutrient that you eat, because we all know people get burnt out on that. That's really good information when someone's maybe coming to me for the first time and I want to learn everything about every nook and cranny of their diet. But if you just want to improve your brain health and I want to know, okay, here's the 15 foods that we know, the 10 are associated with improving brain health and 5 are associated with a decline in brain health, then see where you're at. Track how frequently you eat the 10 foods now. Track how frequently you eat the 5 foods that maybe could be a good idea to limit. And then go from there rather than trying to revolutionize your whole eating pattern. Maybe pick 1 or 2 things from the list. Go from where you're at. See where you're at.
Because I think a lot of people think they're either eating better than they are or maybe are eating a little bit better than they are. So the self-monitoring is a great way to actually see where you're at and like, I'm not getting very many whole grains. Okay, I can add a few more in there. Or, I'm not getting any EVO. I thought I was. It's just a great way to really see, just writing it down without judgment, just what you're eating. It can just be the Mind Diet foods, and, it gives you a much better idea of what you need to adjust if you do. And if you're looking great, then tell yourself it's looking great. Like, you're doing awesome, like be your best cheerleader. I think there's a lot of shame talk when it comes to changing diet. It's very hard, and just give yourself some credit that you're even trying to eat better,
Absolutely.
Yeah. And when you do well, applaud yourself. Don't look at what you didn't do right. Look at what you did do right.
Give yourself some grace.
Yeah.
When it comes to the brain itself, brain health, any misconceptions, myths that you think are worth busting?
Oh, yeah. Mythbusters. Where do you want to start? Well, coconut oil is like a popular one. It has been for a while. That really doesn't have a lot of evidence to be protective of the brain. And again, how much coconut oil are people eating? I don't know. Like, what are you putting it on? It
had its moment 10 years ago.
People were putting it on everything. People were putting it in their hair, on their skin. They weren't just eating it. It has an SPF of 3, It is like, I did not
as a pale
know that,
person,
Laura.
I know that. Yeah.
Ooh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. It gives you a couple minutes out in the sun without a burn.
Whoa,
I don't know. Yeah.
Cool.
Any current, I'm thinking of questions that come up a lot.
Do you get topics that come up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. What are some? Maybe the role of sugar, like added sugars and things like that.
Yeah, sugar's the evidence on that is just starting to emerge, but I don't think anybody's surprised. Yeah. Because in the early observational studies, at least in the Mind Diet and brain health, sugar surprisingly wasn't associated when we just looked at the effects of, because there's the 5 foods on the list to limit, and so sweets and pastries is that 5th food, but it was really thought to be the saturated fat that was the reason that it was associated versus the sugar. And everybody was really surprised, quite frankly, that didn't show an association. And so now more studies are coming out showing that, of course, sugar is not helpful for the brain. So one of the pathology studies that I mentioned before, where people were donating their brains afterwards, specifically sugar-sweetened beverages, ultra-processed foods, and sugar content from that was shown to accelerate double, and in some of the analyses, triple acceleration of Alzheimer's disease, compared to people who ate the highest amounts compared to people who ate the lowest amounts in the brain pathology, beta amyloid plaques.
Wow.
Yeah. So we do have some, and I think that body of research is growing even more. I think we're just learning more about what people are eating. We're finding more of the junk.
And how do you feel after you eat a lot of sugar, too?
Yeah.
Those are just very simple, things to pay attention to. Like, I have a sweet tooth. I admit it. I love sugar, but I really feel awful after I have something that's very high sugar, and it's just paying attention to those little things is your body's way of letting you know if something is beneficial to you or not. Just intuitively, like, I don't feel good after I eat, a big old cookie or something. It just, and then going back to this, a lot of the risk factors for Alzheimer's, like diabetes and obesity and hypertension, those are also a result of eating too much sugar, right? Like, so by reducing those risk factors, you're reducing, you're helping your brain,
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Adults today consume a ton of added sugar. I think it's like the last I checked, 77 pounds of added sugar per person per year.
It's sad. It's really sad because you see kids doing it now too. Kids' diets are so high in sugar, and there's not really a lot of nutrients in the foods that they're getting. You want to eat nutrient-dense food.
Yeah.
That's what's protecting us are those nutrients.
It's very sad, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another contentious topic is artificial sweeteners, actually.
Yeah.
Any relationship between artificial sweetener intake and brain health, positive or negative?
Not that I know of.
There was American Heart Association actually put out a statement as well, connecting the artificial sweeteners with acceleration of dementia and Alzheimer's disease. That was back in 2017. But yeah, we, for a long time, people thought they were safe, or there was animal studies that had tested the amounts that you would have to eat. You had to have like very, very high amounts to affect it. But I think we know now that we want to try to avoid both the sugar sweetened beverages and the artificial sweeteners as well. So I tell people to use some of the more natural sweeteners if they really feel like they need a sweetener, something like a stevia or monk fruit. Do you have other ones that you like?
I like honey, just
use the more natural.
Yes, and maple syrup, a good quality maple syrup.
Canadian.
I lived in Canada, but just pay attention to what you're sweetening, and if you're just I feel like part of food, you don't want to taste just the sweet. You want it to enhance whatever you have. So some people, I watch and I'm like, are you tasting anything but sugar? It's just, you want it to just kind of enhance what you have or balance it. If it's like a coffee or something, right? Coffee has a bitter taste, and you want to balance it. You don't want to mask it. So don't just drown your stuff in sweeteners. You want it to kind of enhance it. And just like everything, just don't go overboard, and don't sweeten everything. I think once it can be addictive, and then you start just adding it to everything. And then you're just kind of chasing that sugar rush, right? So,
yeah. There's something, I don't know, there's something nice for me with because my overnight oats thing, like there is actually no sugar in it other than what's naturally occurring in the banana and like
the milk.
And the milk, yeah. But the protein powder I use is sugar-free. But there is something nice for me about getting something, I don't really crave sweet later in the day so much, but in the morning there's something nice about, I'll happily start my day with steak and eggs, of course, but like there is something kind of, it just goes down really easily, and smoothly, like something sweet, early in the morning for me.
Yeah.
Do you think your body knows you're about to get in a really good workout?
Maybe that's probably what it is, because that's what I do. I mean, I eat, and then I go to the gym.
Yeah.
And
maybe you've conditioned your body to be ready for that. Ready to soak up all the...
Yeah, it works for me. I'm not endorsing sweet breakfast, but I mean, if you can find something that works for you that doesn't actually have a lot of sugar.
Yeah.
I mean, I avoid artificial sweeteners, but I'm fairly liberal, I guess, with like the monk fruit and the stevia.
Yeah.
Erythritol, like sugar alcohols. Are you guys fans of those?
I don't like the way they taste.
No.
Yeah, but yeah.
I don't either. I don't like the way they taste.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I'm giggling. I used to... Okay. I don't like the way they taste.
You don't like the way they okay. We'll leave it there.
We'll leave it at that,
There's
Max.
nothing more to say.
Yeah. Well, I love the guy's book. I love your guys' book. I mean, I also like that it considers both, the weight problem, like the obesity problem. Like you promise a program that can help people both lose weight and lower their risk for Alzheimer's disease.
Yeah.
Is there a reason why you included weight loss as one of the value adds of the book?
Yeah, well, our clinical trial did include weight loss. So all of the folks actually in the clinical trial lost a significant amount of weight. They lost about 5.5% of their weight at 6 months, and then they maintained it till the end of the trial. So in the weight loss world, that's a big deal, especially maintaining it through COVID. So that's one reason. But the other reason is also, we know, as Laura's already mentioned, that being overweight or obese is a risk factor for cognitive decline. So that was, we wanted to be really intentional about how we presented that in the book, because we really wanted to include it, because we know that folks, have a need for weight loss. We know it's a risk factor for cognitive decline, so we wanted to incorporate those tips. That being said, we also know that there's also a little bit, sometimes, especially lately, of a stigma around sometimes the promotion of weight loss.
Yeah.
And we didn't want people to think that it was another weight loss book, right? Or that in order to be healthy, it means that you have to lose weight no matter where you're at, right? So the way we organized it in the book was we put the science first, and then we have, the food tips and the recommendations for the program. And then we put the weight loss stuff afterwards. So you're reading about how to take care, all the foods, how to take care of your brain, how to incorporate it into your lifestyle. And then if you're someone that wants to incorporate weight loss as well, those tips are at the end, because some it's needed, it's necessary.
Yes, well, for more than half the population of adult Americans, right? It's a big problem for many reasons, and I think they're pretty obvious. But so it's important that people feel empowered when reading that if they are overweight to have all of really science-based mechanisms for helping to lose weight, right? It's not impossible. I think some people have been struggling with weight, especially now with Ozempic. It's not possible at all. But we want people to feel like they can do it. And here's what we know about losing weight and people who lose weight and keep it off. And Jen did a beautiful job at listing out exactly how you can do it. So you can just follow the MIND diet and lose weight. You certainly, if you're overweight, needing to lose weight, or you might need a little extra help. So we wanted to include all those things for, because we see it. Jen sees it, and people need a little extra help. So it's all the things that we know can help lose weight.
That makes perfect sense. And you've also got 60 plus recipes in the book. Do you guys have like a favorite recipe?
Oh, favorite recipe? I don't know. There's one, it's a white fish with olives and artichoke with like lots of olive oil on it and lemon and herbs. It's probably my favorite. I make it for people all the time. And
Sounds so good.
It's so good, and it's so easy to make, and it's so quick, but it tastes very gourmet, So I make that one a lot, and people always love it. I don't know. I like a lot of them. I try to keep it a little bit more simple in terms of really like the everyday foods, like overnight oats. We have the recipe in there, right? Like that's not an elaborate breakfast. These aren't all gourmet things. It's things that you could do every day. Like, oh, this is how I can do it. It's delicious and easy, and I can get it in my day, So I find that they're very simplified. It's like how to throw some veggies and quinoa together and put an egg on top, It's literally like just how to get these in, in a very simple way, meal plan for them. And
I love it. And I love that it's an omnivorous diet. I think it's phenomenal. It's a beautiful cover. And I'm just super excited that you guys have put this out into the world. It's beautiful. And what a tribute to your mom too,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think she'd be really proud.
I do too. She is, she loved the research, and she loved it because there's always more to learn. And I think that's the best scientists have that approach, right? There's not an end product with scientific investigation. You just keep learning, and it's right. More research is needed. There's no end in sight. But I like the idea of just it continuing on, and like we'll learn more, and just keep adding to what we know to help protect your brain from Alzheimer's. It's a terrible disease, and we really have come very far, and a lot of it due to this work with the MAP studies and the Chicago Health and Aging Project studies, and it's exciting, and I can't wait to see what else comes up.
And ongoing, the largest investigation right now that is using the MIND diet and continuing is the U.S. Pointer study. So that's looking at a whole host of lifestyle interventions. So we use the MIND diet, we use physical activity, cognitive and intellectual stimulation, and then health monitoring. So
it's really cool.
We're still in the midst of that. To be continued.
I love that. Has it changed at all since it was originally
the MIND
devised?
diet?
Yeah.
There's been small changes.
Small changes. Yeah. Like minute. Berries moved up in the recommendations.
They added seeds to the nuts and seeds.
To the nuts. But so we've actually put together a panel of people at Rush University, dietitians, scientists, to handle questions like this, because the original research that came out, so many foods are coming out and people are eating so many things, and there's different regions. So, we want to make some not only scientifically informed decisions, but clinical recommendations around that as well. So I suspect that, especially with the pointer data coming out, that we'll be continuing to update those recommendations.
Yeah, like for countries that don't have access to berries or something, right?
That's a perfect example. Actually, we're working with the Latin American Fingers, which is the Latin American group that is the equivalent of the U.S. pointer study, which of course started with the finger trial in Finland that was the first multi-domain intervention that had a lifestyle only impact on the brain. We're working with that group to see how we can modify, because that's the perfect example. Berries are not available. Yeah. They also don't use a lot of extra virgin olive oil. Yeah. It's not accessible. So let's kind of take it down to the nutrient level and see what other things are comparable, but then also, test that and explore and see what outcomes can be discovered.
Super exciting stuff. Well, thank you guys for doing the work that you do.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Thanks for having us on to talk about it.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Of course. I've got just one last question. But before we get to that, where can people pick up the book, and where can they connect with you on social media?
You can get the book on Amazon or through our publisher, Little Brown. Our social media is The Official Mind Diet. We also have a website, theofficialminddiet.com, where we have a lot of the information that we talked about today and a lot of useful. We have the refrigerator chart. We have meal planning tips and templates. And we also offer a 6-week program if people want to really dive in a little bit deeper, that Jen and I run together. So it's a small group work where we educate you on things and show you how to do it, and some cooking demos and things like that. So it's a lot of fun.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Love it. Well, last question that gets asked everybody on the show. What does living a genius life mean to you?
You
could tag team it. You could answer together.
Yeah. What does living a genius life mean to me? I feel like we might have different answers. We'll see. I feel like mine is to never stop learning, to always be open to expanding your knowledge on yourself. Like we are changing. We're at different stages all the time. So never stop learning about yourself, where you're at, and trying your best to meet you where you are and be your healthiest, no matter what is going on, because life is hard. Life is very hard, and it's about meeting yourself in those hard times.
Yeah.
Beautifully put.
Yeah, I have a similar answer, and I think it's to be introspective, be intentional. I think you can know everything there is to know, and I think we covered today that it's not just about diet. It's whole lifestyle, physical activity, sleep, intellectual stimulation, socialization, right? But going inward and knowing, for example, where your stress levels are, what's your capacity to integrate all of that. You need to be a genius in yourself before you can go out and be a genius in the world.
I love that. So true.
What is yours?
Ooh, man. People always throw it back at me, and I'm always left speechless. I don't know. I mean, for me, I think it's just maintaining an open mind, and being courageous in your ability to generate novel, authentic thoughts. Because today, I think it's a lot easier to adopt the thoughts of social group.
Yeah. Yep.
Because people tend to want social acceptance more than they want the truth.
Yeah.
People value the truth, but they value social acceptance more.
Yeah.
And that usually doesn't lead to good things.
No.
I think that's part of the reason why we are as a society where we are, where
absolutely.
everybody's at each other's throats continually, it seems.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, just be like an independent thinker.
Yeah.
Remain open-minded, remain curious. And
I like the word courageous too, because it is hard to break away from the mold and peers and.
It is to be an independent thinker.
Yeah, yeah.
It's incredibly difficult.
Yeah. It's and I think about the people that I really admire, and they have that quality. They're very courageous with the way they approach things, and that's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I aspire to be. It's what I aspire for my audience, for my audience members, my listeners, and yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much
for having us.
Thank you guys. Hey, if you liked that video, you need to check out this one here, and I'll see you there.